The Leafs have a full roster, but these prospects are forcing management to make tough decisions. One of these guys we're going to talk about is Noah Gregor. We'll talk about him later in the video, but first we just want to say that 91.8% of you guys aren't subscribed, so if you're looking for a place to daily NHL and daily Leafs content, look no further and go down below and hit that subscribe button. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the main topic of the video today, which is which prospect will make the final cut. And the first person we're going to talk about today is Bobby McMann. And obviously, Bobby McMann has been in the Leafs system, and last year really had a breakout. He had 21 goals in 30 games, and he had a brief 10-game stint with Toronto last year. But we think he might make the cut out of the training camp this year. He's 6'2", 210. He knows how to use his body. He throws the weight around. And obviously, he can score at an elite level. But he is a strong two-way forward. He has a defensive edge to his game as well. And obviously, based on his contract, we could see him pop up on this third or fourth line to get some minutes this year. Due to Toronto's cap, having a guy up there who's only like $700K or around that, I think would just be great for them. And obviously, he has some tough competition with like Nick Robertson, Nas, Yarncroke, Domi, and Lafferty all at the left wing position. But if he has a strong training camp, don't be shocked if he finds his way into the lineup. And Mark, I know you're a Bobby McMann fan. What do you think about Bobby McMann potentially coming up to fill a third or fourth line role this year for the Leafs?
If you look at last year, I mean, he went on a 15-game span where he scored 15 goals for the Toronto Marlies. He had a 10-game stint with the Leafs. He had a goal waved off. He didn't put up any goals when he was with the Leafs, but you just seen his strong dominance on the Marlies. At the age of 27, I believe, it's just a feel-good story too, where you see this guy working his way through the AHL, kind of getting through the system, and he's finally trying to make that final push just to make it to the NHL level. I think he'd be a great player if you slide him in on the third or fourth line. I could see a situation where Toronto might have a little bit of struggles with the bottom six scoring out of the gate. It's a lot of new faces, a lot of guys getting used to each other. And if the scoring is kind of struggling, I could see Bobby definitely being one of the top guys brought up right away. He's a guy, he can score. You see a lot of highlights of him. He can tip in front of the net. He has a great shot. He knows where to be. He can retrieve pucks from the corners. And overall, I think his game would translate incredible to the NHL. And I think the Leafs are going to find a spot for him in the lineup. Don't know if it's going to be a full-time, but it's a situation where I could definitely see him up for a little bit, give him a test run, see how it develops, and I think he can make himself into a full-time NHL bottom six guy within the next year or two for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And if you bring this guy up to play with, say, Ryan Reeves on that fourth line, that's just adding some more goal scoring to your bottom line that probably wouldn't be there if he's not in the lineup. But like you said, this guy, if he gets a shot, it's a guy who can go on a hot streak. You know, like you said, 15 goals in 15 games. If he can come up in the NHL and score a goal every second game or every third game, I think he could cement himself definitely as a fourth or third line player in Toronto this season.
Yeah, if you look 2 years ago on the Marlies, it was him and Josh Hosang kind of had this chemistry where Josh Hosang ran as the assist guy, McMahon ran as the primary goal scorer on that line, and you've seen it really work out. So even if you get into a situation where you feel comfortable running Domi on the center, or if you wanted to run him on his off wing on the right and then run a guy like Kampf at the middle, I think Bobby could fill in perfectly on this. It's a situation where if you can get 10, 15, even 20 goals, 20 would be incredible from a guy like this. But if you can get 15 goals out of him, maybe run him 60 games, maybe a little less, get a few less goals from him, but just kind of this filler guy. I think he is the perfect piece, and I think he's overlooked in the Leaf system as a guy that could almost step up this year and be big for him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like you said, I think this guy is looked over a fair amount in Toronto, and I think if the Toronto's dealing with some injuries throughout this season, I definitely think we could see him come up and fill that role and play really well and kind of surprise a lot of people. But we're gonna get into our next person here, who is Topi Niemela. And obviously, a lot of Leafs fans might know Topi. He played 6 games in the AHL last season. He's been one of Toronto's highly touted defensive prospects over these last couple of years. Obviously, they say here he doesn't have that much experience playing in North America yet, so making a jump to NHL right away could be a stretch. But since the Leafs don't have that much depth at their defense position, we could see Topi jump up and play this year, especially if they're dealing with injuries, or if he's having a great year in the AHL, he could definitely make that jump.
We've seen him play overseas in a professional league. He held his own over there. He looked incredible. He was almost a point per game on the Marlies last season in the playoffs. And it's a situation he's came out said, and a lot of Leaf staff has said he needs to work on his strength a little bit, and just that kind of situation. But he has been working on the offseason to add some weight, put some strength into his game. But overall, he's incredible at moving the puck. You look in the defensive end, sometimes he gets pushed around, but he has such a defensive edge. He has good stick work that he doesn't get out of position with this. He does get out strength a tiny bit, but that'll come with time in the North American system. So I could see the situation where Giordano gets a few rest games here and there. You get Timmins into the lineup, Benoit, but I could see Topi being this kind of situation where you bring him up, test him out for a few games, maybe at the end of the year or during a long road stretch. And overall, I think he is going to crack the Leafs next year. This year, I'm not sure if you could trust him enough going into the playoffs. We've seen guys like Cale Makar, who is on another level than a guy like this. But you see these younger guys really cement themselves. If he has a strong AHL season, I could see the situation where test him out a bit. If he looks amazing, you keep him. If not, you can just put him back in the Marlies, let him run through the playoffs there, get that full year development. And I think next year, for sure, he's going to be a staple in this Leafs blue line.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a guy who's proved himself to be a great player during international play as well. I think this is just going to be such a great defensive prospect for the Leafs, who kind of really don't have many big names in their prospect pool for defense right now. Obviously, they got some guys down in the Marlies system that could step up if need be. I think this guy's just going to have a great year in Toronto this year with the Marlies this year, and I think we could definitely see him maybe get up for 5 or 6 games, see how he is. If he's playing well, you could keep him there, but you don't want to have a guy like this as a healthy scratch, a young guy. You kind of want him playing and developing, especially where he hasn't played in North America. But I think if he gets up, I think he will prove himself. He's a great two-way guy, like you said, and I just think this is be a great ad for the Leafs maybe midway through the season.
Yeah, with the Marlies, I fully expect him to be a top power play guy, the top penalty kill. He'll get the most ice time out of all defensemen. And it's a situation where, like you said, you just let him develop through. I recommend everyone keep his name in your mind during training camps. I think he's going to be a standout guy that a lot of people, the media, everyone's going to be talking about. I have high hopes. He's my top prospect on the Leafs right now. You look at Nyes, he's already on the Leafs, so I don't, consider him too much of a prospect at this point. He's pretty much cemented himself. But I'd keep an eye on this name. I think he's outstanding, and the Leafs have a gem in this guy, in my opinion.
Damn, we've seen a guy like this come through the Leafs system before with Timothy Liljegren. He started out all the way down the ECHL, worked his way up to the Marlies, and now he's cemented himself as that third pairing guy for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I think you really should have Niemela on your radar. I think, especially during training camp, I think he's going to have a great training camp. And who knows, if he has a great training camp, we could definitely see him crack the lineup either this season, maybe even opening night if he has a really good show out in training camp. But we're going to get to our next guy here, which is Noah Gregor, who we mentioned earlier in this video. Obviously, Noah Gregor just signed a PTO in Toronto to get himself in training camp and try to fight for a roster spot. But this is a guy who last year played in San Jose, or for the last couple of years has played in San Jose. A great physical guy, a player that can step up, lay the body. He has a great takeaway to giveaway ratio as well. And last year scored 10 goals with that San Jose Sharks team. That wasn't the best, but he does have 178 games NHL experience. So this is a guy who you should look for during training camp, because I think this guy could take Pontus Holmberg's fourth line center role.
Yeah, when you look at this, you can kind of see the Leafs management's trying to add this grit. When you look at Gregor, he's the situation where he's so fast. I didn't know a lot about this guy before we signed the PTO, but it seems like a lot of people are saying he's one of the fastest guy in the league. His shot's really inconsistent. He scored 10 goals last year for a terrible Sharks team. I think 6 of those came within the last 11, 12 games, something like that. So his scoring might not be completely there, but when you have a guy that's not afraid to go into corners, a guy that's going to be physical. He's fast. He can beat people down to the pucks. This just kind of opens up more scoring possibilities for people. So if you put him into the fourth line, say it's a guy like him, Lafferty, and Reeves, it's not going to be your best offensive line, but it's a line where it's going to really tire people out. And every team needs this. I mean, you look at Tampa, they had a guy like Pat Maroon, who's not the best offensive player, but just physicality, it gets under your skin. You have a guy like Corey Perry, a guy that does the exact same. And I could kind of see this in the Leafs' fourth line, where you don't get a lot of goal scoring like Tampa's fourth line brought, but you get so much physicality, you get his speed, and everything in this situation where I think he would be a perfect fit for the Leafs' fourth line. I think he kind of pushes guys like Holmberg and Bobby McMann out a tiny bit because you get experience with them, and he plays that style that seems like Leafs management's really pushing for.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen last season with like the addition of Zach Aston Reese. Obviously, he had a great camp, and last year played really well for Toronto, especially in the playoffs. I thought he was such a great player for Toronto, and I think this is kind of what the Leafs have in Noah Gregor, kind of someone who's not really on your radar, but will come in and just steal the show. I think if you have a line with Gregor and Reeves and possibly Bobby McMann at some point throughout this season, I think this line, if you're the other team, you kind of want to run the other way because you're going to be leaving with ice packs and band-aids on because these guys are just going to be crushing into the boards. I think if it's him and Reeves throughout the season on that fourth line, I think this fourth line's just going to be a beauty to watch. It's just going to be a physical, grind them down type of line. And, if they get out there for 10 minutes a night, I think, this could be a really great line for Toronto this year.
Yeah, you kind of look at it when they signed Zach Aston Reese to the PTO. They had Kubel, who was going to be their fourth line winger. Ultimately, we kept Zar and we let Kubel go on waivers, who Washington claimed. So I could see a situation like this too, where you kind of keep an eye out because if we do sign him, you could see a guy like Lafferty maybe be placed some waivers, maybe a Yarn Croak trade. And it's a situation where I do think he will get signed. I'm not sure if he's going to make the team right away, but I mean, if you look at his stats, I mean, 10 goals isn't too much to brag about, but that's also on a Sharks team that didn't look good. So if you put him into a more gifted bottom six, a bit more playmaking, a bit more scoring, those numbers will ultimately go up. If you add the speed, the defensive edge, a bit of physicality, I think he makes for the perfect fit for a fourth line.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to see what plays out during training camp. I know if you're a hardcore Leafs fan, definitely tune in to the training camp because this will really cement the final roster for the Leafs. But we're going to get into our last topic of the video, which is everybody's favorite comment of the day. And the comment of the day today goes to Tatiana. He says, awesome video, guys. Again, I'm just debating who will play with Marner or Matthews on the top line, Nyes or Bertuzzi, and will Klingberg play on the top power play line. And we had a video on this earlier in the season, but with all these additions, I think we might have to make another one soon. But I think we predicted back then that Nyes would be the guy to put up on that top line.
I think it ultimately comes down to what happens with Domi at this point. If you see Domi as your third line center or winger as a playmaker just to kind of give a boost to the bottom six, I think it will be Nyes on the top and you add Bertuzzi on the line with Tavares and Nylander. But if you're going to put Domi in the top six, I could see a situation where Nyes slides down to the third, Bertuzzi moves up, and then you put Domi onto the second line. It really comes down to that. I think training camp's going to be huge for this. With the Klingberg thing, I think it's kind of, they'll try both. I mean, Morgan's done a great job on the Leafs power play, and Klingberg would bring a lot to the second unit. But I could see a situation where you run, your top guys on the power play, and then just kind of cycle through between Riley and Klingberg, depending on how many minutes they've played. Situational, if you need more shots on net from a guy like Klingberg, whose shot might be a little stronger than Riley's. So it really comes down to training camp, what works better, how everyone meshes together. And it's nice to speculate, but at this point, I don't think we can really say because you never know what happened. Bobby McMann could be the top line winger.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of training camp. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to go down below, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 1,000 before the season starts. And thank you guys for 600 subscribers. We really appreciate it. Thank you. We just want to thanks for all your support. And make sure to comment down below your favorite prospect we talked about today. Maybe we didn't talk about him. Let us know down in the comment section below. But I've been KC alongside my co-host Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.